Reading Brian Drake's Castaways of the Flying Dutchman. Chapter 40. Sergeant Patterson was an easy man to get on with. Ben explained to him how he had come by the information that the Smithers guest, Maud Body, was having 4 of her father's company thugs sent up from London to frighten Mrs. Wynne into leaving her home. Sergeant spoke without looking at Ben as they walked toward the square. "Why do you inform me of this before, lad?" The boy thought hard before replying. "Well, I'd never met you before this morning, but when you got the telegraph message, it mentioned 4 men coming up from London. I thought you'd better know what I'd found out, so I'm telling you now." The Scots sergeant nodded. "Aye, fair enough. I hope you don't mind me asking, but how did you plan on dealing with them? Always providing that what Hetty told Miss Wynne was fact and not kitchen tattle." Ben's eyes grew narrow. "Oh, I'd think of something new one way or another. I'd think of something one way or another." The sergeant questioned him further. "Did you tell any others, John or Will, for instance?" "No, you're the first one I've spoken to about it." The policeman could not help but admiring the boy's courage. "And you were going to handle it all on your own, eh?" Ben stopped and stared at the bobby. "Me and Ned could do it." There was something about the pair, the manner in which the big black dog stood by the boy and the determined light in the boy's blue eyes. Sergeant Patterson smiled. "Better money that you could. But there's 3 of us now, and I'm the law, as it was the constable 4 years in the East in London, and you think you better give me some assistance, son?" "Better let me give some assistance, son." He held out his hand. "Are you all right with you?" The boy shook Patterson's hand. "Fine with me, Sarge. Rightio, Ned." The black Labrador held out his paw to the astonished sergeant, who took it firmly and laughed. "Ha ha ha! Yon's a pretty intelligent dog." The dog flashed a passing thought to his master. "This young sergeant's fairly bright too, eh, lad?" The postmaster, Seth Tabbitt, had more news for them when they arrived at his office. "Message come from Drake Hampton. I don't think those 4 men in the motor vehicle know where they are," asked the postmate. Asked for directions for Chapelvale. They said they were racehorse buyers. Drove off and nearly got knocked on an old gent knocked down who was crossing the road. The sergeant turned to Ben. "Would you like to go round to the rail station sidings for me? Tell Constable Judum that I can relieve him and to stay there. I'm going to use the telegraph here, get a description of all our 4 friends and their motor cars for Draketon. Then I'll contact the headquarters in London and see what they know about them." The constable was in his element. He stood holding on to the bicycle in view of the prohibition movement. Noticed he had fixed to rail prohibition of movement. Notice and had fixed to the rail trucks. Nothing but his sergeant's command would cause him to quit his post. He assured Ben, adding, "You tell the sergeant I'll stand here all day and night if it needs be, lad." Sergeant Peterson was beaming when they returned to the post office. The Labrador passed as a thought to Ben. "I must look as though that when I get a big beef marrow bone." The boy could not hide a grin. "Ah, you do." Further thoughts were cut short by the sergeant, who met the 2 at the door. "What ye were, lad? George Pearson is alias Gripper, Frederick Lloyd alias Flash, Charles Hayland alias Chaz, and Eric Wardle alias Chunk, driving a motorized vehicle registration BL98 stolen from the front drive of Colonel Bubsby Hism Smiddens of South Hampstead Crescent, London, yesterday evening. He strode to the post office, patting Ben's back and stroking the dog's head, a defiant spring in his step. Oi, Joy, they have been guests at the headquarters a few times. Felons they were, is what they are. Ben, known criminals. Ben had a trot to keep up with the sergeant's long strides. What's the next move, then, Sarge? Patterson squared his shoulders. Reception committee, lad. We've got to give our London friends a warm welcome. Ha ha ha. If the constable knew, he'd be sharpening his bayonet and cleaning his old rifle, army rifle. Best leave him guarding the railway tracks, eh? Excitement, Ben, the very spice of life. Ask him where we're off to now, pal. Ben caught the Labrador's thought and asked the sergeant, where are we going now, Sarge? To Mrs. Wynn's house, of course. They want to see if they can solve the candlestick riddle. Keep up there, partner. Relief flooded the boy as he marched jauntily alongside his competent friend. He could not really know he had not really known what he was going to do about the London villains. Of course he had put on a confident air when Winnie told him about it, but that was mainly for her benefit. Truth, he had acted just like a typical Chapelvale villager, pushing the matter into the back of his mind, hoping that it would all just Hetty's gossip. He counted himself very lucky that he had confided in Sergeant Patterson. Don't blame yourself too much, pal. The dog followed in Ben's tracks. A boy and a dog are pretty thin odds against four fully grown rogues. Our policemen will deal with them. We'll look at the sergeant. Look at the sergeant. He actually is looking forward to it. Ben tugged Ned's tail. Excuse me, pal, but do you mind not cutting into my thoughts? The Labrador snapped playfully at Ben's ankle. And what about my thoughts, pray? I was worried about you, about the as you is on the issue. Thank goodness for the law, I say. They encountered a fairly pensive group in the Wynn study room, studying a piece of paper that lay unfurled upon the table. Ben looked hopefully at the seaman. So you found something, is it? That it? Aye, lad, the paper was rolled up inside the other candlestick. What do you make of it? The paper, for the most part, was blank except for one corner, which had two rows of tiny cramped writing. Ben read aloud. Be of good heart, like a flame pure and true. May the light of St. Mark bring my words into you. E.D.W. The sergeant picked up the paper and inspected it. Good, thick, quality stuff. Far more substantial than the thin slip that was in the other candlestick. Have you tried matching them together in any way? Mr. Blaithwaite placed the thin paper on the table. We were just about to do so, or yes, quite so. Between them, Miss Blaithwaite and Mr. Mackey tried connecting both papers, heading every suggestion put forward by the rest. They placed the papers side by side, one over the other, semi-overlapping, and every other possible combination you could guess at. The result was nothing, absolutely nothing. With Will Drummond clenched both fists. Shutting his eyes tight, he called out in frustration, St. Mark, are you listening? We're all of good heart. Do you think you could save us into your secret, eh? before it's too late for Chapelvale. Miss Will's ma pursed her lips severely. William Drummond, don't you be so disrespectful to that's one of the Lord's disciples. You won't get anything done like that. The blue-eyed boy felt pins and needles prickle his scalp, realizing the truth of her statement. He called another place and another time long ago when a man had ranted and called out against heaven, and he remembered the results of that day. Elena rescued little William, who was trying to sit on Ned's back. Ma's right, Will. Anyhow, I think there's too many cooks at the puddin' round here. Ain't you got nothing else to do, you men folk? Sergeant Peterson had an idea. Why don't you ladies and Mr. Blaithwaite set your minds to solving the puzzle? I'll take the men out into the kitchen, and there's something I want to speak to them about. Winnie exchanged a secret smile with her friend Hetty. Agreed, Sergeant. Would you mind taking these dishes out with you when you go and washing them? We'll let you know when we want more tea. The sergeant paused right at the doorway. Right to your arm. Ben, Alex, bring the dishes out. You're with the men now. You keen? Amy handed her brother a cup and saucer. Here you are, sir. Alex took them, giving her a stern glance. After all, he was classed as one of the men now. In the gathering dusk, Gripper jammed on the brake, throwing the motor car's occupants forwards. Flash nipped back. See what it says on that signpost we just passed. Go on, move yourself. Flash blinked, rubbing his eyes. Go easy, Weller. Grip, I was just talking 40 winks there. Gripper raised his threatening fist. I'll give you 40 winks. Get you going. You're supposed to be the one keeping watch. Flash slouched out moodily down the road. Gripper unfolded the sketch of Chapelvale, which had been supplied by Maud Bowie's father, squinting at it in the half-light. Can't be hard to spot. She can't be too far from this spot now, eh? He answered by Trunk's serotonin snore from the back seat. Using the leather gauntlet he had just removed, Gripper turned and belabored the two sleepers vigorously. Am I the one with eyes open around here? Wake up! The blows bounced off Chunk's stolid face, and he opened one eye. What's the matter? Are we there? Chaz snuffled, wiping a grimy sleeve across his upper lip and complaining as he expected it. Yours started to nose off and bleeding again. What do you do that for? Flash interrupted further complaints by climbing back into the front passenger seat. It's the afford any good? Gripper explored the sketch with a grimy finger, repeating, afford, let me see, afford this. Up from the far corner of the drawing, a road leading to Chapelvale was marked Hayford Road. Gripper realized that it was totally the wrong way to be approaching their destination. Hayford Road was at the north side of Chapelvale. Coming up from London, they should have entered by the South Road, which ran parallel to the railway line, but he did not offer his information to the others. Instead, he pronounced proudly, See, I wasn't lost. Told you I knew the way, didn't I? He continued driving, assuming they agreed by their silence, until Flash spoke his thoughts over the chugging noise. But you said it was 4-hour drive. We've been in the road since 5 this morning. Gripper had an explanation, as he always did. Oh, yes, but look at the times we had to stop when that farmer was going chuck a rock, and those cows blocked the lane. When we turned into that farmyard by mistake, when Yows puts the motor backwards, when we asked the post office lady for it away, it's all the times, the trip, it all adds time. Chunk sighed wistfully. I liked the post lady. She was going to give me some water. I wish I had a glass now. Flash laughed mercifully. What's a glass of beer? That's what I need. And a good plate of steak and kidney pie. I'm starved. I've only had a slice of toast since her breakfast. Chabs dabbed the scarf into his injured nose. Yous be too, I be hungry. You never stops for no food, not once. It was rapidly growing dark. Gripper clenched his teeth as he bumped over a fallen branch lying in the path. Stop about the food, you lot. Eat, eat, that's all you think about. One more word out of you, Chaz, and I'll stop this motor and give you a knuckle sandwich. How do you like that, eh? Ooh! Gripper did not realize it was the yell of a nearby owl that had hooted. You? That's who, Chaz. Now that's your job. But I never said nothing, Grip. Grip nodded. Well, just your loose lips. Aye, aye. Is that lights up ahead on that hill? Chunk replied, That'll be Ainford. We can get to the summit and to eat when we get there. Gripper kept his eyes riveted on the road. We could if we was stopping there, but we ain't. Mr. Bowie's daughter'll be wondering where we've got to. Flash pulled a face. Oh, that little Miss Snot Nose. My daddy says you got to do this. My daddy says you got to do that. And she looks at you like you're something she stepped in. Gripper sniffed. She always looks at us any way she wants to, as long as her daddy pays up. 5 guineas apiece for putting the frighteners in some old dame, just so she'll leave home. Not bad money for a job like that. The Chunk's stomach gurgled so loud it could be heard above the growl of the engine. He patted it sorrowfully. Don't know about 5 guineas. I settled for a pailful of fish and chips right now with salt and vinegar on 'em. Can you think of nothing but your stomach, you great lump? A further abominable gurgle almost drowned out Gripper's statement. Chunk gazed mournfully at the passing country. Well, I can't help it if my stomach's bigger than yours, Grip. If your brains was as big as your stomach, you'd be in charge of the country, Chunk. Doing the Prime Minister out of a job. That's what you'd be doing, mate. Why, the Prime Minister's got a big stomach, Grip. The Prime Minister, just go back to sleep, will you, Chunk? Flash propped his feet up on the dashboard. Can I have a snooze too, Grip? Gripper let go of the steering wheel with one hand. He gave Flash a numbing punch in the shin. No, you can't. You keep your eyes on the open for more signs. Chapter 41. Got our clue in the corner. Be of good heart, like the flame pure and true. May the light of St. Matthew's bring my words unto you. EDW. Mr. Blaithwaite and the lady sat in the gathering room, staring at a paper as Amy read the rhyme for the third time. Ben entered the room with a lightened tapper. John told me to bring you some light before you ruin your eyes staring at that paper. Mrs. Wynne had neither gas nor new electricity, favoring the old ways, and kept 4 ornate oil lamps in her sitting room. The boys lit them all, one on the mantelpiece, two on the window ledges, and the pen front. He touched his tapper to the wick of the largest lamp, as with its tall chimney and cream-hued bowl. The lamp stood on the same table as the paper and gave off a wonderfully soft glow. Ben chuckled. Now you can see things properly, Miss Wynne. I'm going out with the men. The worried frown creased the old lady's brow. So that's what you were discussing in the kitchen. I knew as soon as the sergeant read out the telegram, the 4 men coming here in the motor car. Be careful, then. Do exactly as Sergeant Peterson tells you. They could be dangerous. There was something in the blue eyes of the strange boy from the sea that told her, the old lady, that he had faced danger many a times. His hand felt reassuring as he touched her shoulder. We'll take care of this, John, Will, Mr. Mackey, Alex, and the sergeant and myself. No need to worry. Don't open the door to anybody until you've looked through the window to see who's there. I'll leave Ned with you just in case. Little William had played himself out and lay on the sofa, surrounded by cushions, as his mother covered him with an old plaid traveling rug. Ned came to sit by her. Elaine patted the big dog's head. I'd like to see anyone try and get past Ned if he didn't want him to come in. You go on, Ben. We're safe enough. Tell my Will not to forget Delilah's nose bag and water bucket. Amy touched the boy's hand. Be careful, Ben, and good luck. He paused at the door, tossing his hair back from his keen blue eyes. Good luck to you too, pal. Don't worry, I'll keep my eye on you, Alex, for you. Stay, boy. Black Labrador winked at Ben. All right, shipmate. I'm only coming to the door to see you off. As they departed, Mr. Blaythewaite suddenly began pacing the room earnestly. Hetty whispered to her friend, Look at the old buffer scratching away at himself, Winnie. The shoulders of that groan looks as if he's been sprinkling them with talcum powder. Mrs. Wynne suppressed a smile. Shush, he's in deep thought. Mr. Blaythewaite stopped, holding up a finger like an orator about to deliver a speech. It occurs to me, ladies, that we should light a candle in one of those holders, as it were. Very good to see in the light of St. Matthew's. Brings any other words to us? Yes? Mrs. Wynne opened a drawer in the table. It can't do any harm, I suppose. I keep some candles in here. Mr. Blaythewaite took a candle. Using the library key, he scraped the wax at its base until it fit the socket of one of the golden candlesticks. When he had it lit, the old scholar stood holding the candlestick in one hand and the paper in another. Right, very good so far, He was at a loss for what to do next. Will's Ma Sarah came to his rescue, her voice mounting with excitement. Give it to me. I think I know the answer. She practically snatched both the candlestick and paper. The young girl watched curiously as Sarah held the paper over the flame. Be careful, you might burn it. The old woman moved the paper back and forth across the flame confidently. When I was a girl, me old pals used to send message to each other in invisible notes. All you need is some white wine vinegar and lemon juice to write it. Even egg white'll do. See, I was right. Something's showing on the paper here. Heat from the candle flame had caused markings to appear. They were rather faint, but still discernible. To the excited maidservant hugged the young girl with a sob in her voice. Oh, I hope it's something that will put a spoke in old Smithers' wheel. What does it say, Mr. Blaithwaite, sir? What does it say? Scanning the papers, the old scholar shook his head. Nothing really, just shapes or dots, so to speak. The women gathered around the table to view the odd markings. Hetty was both angry and disappointed. I never learned to read or write, but that ain't no writin', can see, ain't it? Nobody could read, I'm sure. Will glanced at Mr. Blaithwaite. What do you think, sir? He's Will's ma glanced at Mr. Blaithwaite. What do you think, sir? He stared at the markings. I tend to agree with Ms. Sarah turned her attention to Amy. Any, and you, girl? What do you make of it? Amy picked up the thin sheet of paper with lines and dots on it. I'd place this paper over that paper and see if it matches up. The dairyman's wife clasped her hands. So would I. My dear, try it. Amy placed the thin paper over the thicker one, lining up the first dot. Mrs. Wynne kissed Amy. Thank you, you clever girl. The black Labrador stood up on his paws on the table, passing a thought to Horatio, who had prowled in. We mustn't forget that good old Edmundy Wynne, too, eh? Meow, sardine, milk, wow, Horatio hungry. Ned stared down at his nose at the cat. Don't think too hard. You'll damage that amazing brain of yours. The library school teacher flopped down in a chair, shaking his head. Thin paper over thick paper, join up the marks? Huh, I never. Must be getting old if I can't see that. Oh yes, old. Here's how it looks. The before with the two clues, and then the top with them together. EW mark milestone east, M with an arrow point down. Chapter 42. With their window bindings pulled down, the village square shops looked as if they were sleeping. Dust had settled on the leaves of the hawthorn trees without even the faintest of breeze to stir it. In the windows of Mr. Mackey's office, the clock showed 10 minutes after midnight. Dark clouds obscured a pale crescent moon. The air was still and warm from the long summer's day. A villainous-looking man, his matted beard showing beneath a battered slouched hat, sat holding reins of a horse and a gig in the shadows. He turned this way and that, watching every possible entrance of the village. Concealed in some bushes at the side of the Hadford Road, Ben and Alex were first to hear the distant chug of a motor car. Without word, side by side, they ran back to the Chapelvale. The villainous-looking man looked up at the boys, came panting up. Did you see them? No, but we heard the motor car. It's coming on Hayford Road. Be here soon. The man nodded. Good boy. Collect Mr. Mackey from the road station. Alex will get Will from School Lane. Make your way up to the police station. See you there. Go and remember, lads, keep out of sight. Gripper stopped the motor just short of the square. Flinging off his gauntlet and goggles, he rested his forehead against the steering wheel and sighed thankfully. Chapelvale at last. Chunk sounded slightly doubtful. You mean we're ear grip? Oh, how'd you know that? Flash shook his head in amazement at Chunk's ignorance. 'Cause we just passed a sign. That said Chapelvale, but I'm supposed you were skipping it again. Trunk straightened his bowler hat and stretched. Nothing with sleeping, wrong with sleeping, is there? It's night time, you know. I got the pains in me gut with hungry. What did we get? Something to eat. You promised us, Grip. Gripper massaged his temple with both hands. Chunk, give it a rest, will ya? For your stomach for a moment, Chaz. You ain't sleepy either, are ya? Huh? How can I sleep with this nose bleeding like a tap? You should have told him not to hit me. Give it hurts. Gripper raised a hand, a single finger in warning. One more out of you. And Chaz, one more. Flash began tugging at Gripper's sleeve. Grip, Grip! Gripper shook him off. I'm here. You don't have to tear my coat off. What is it? Flash pointed. Some of the geezers watching us. Waving a horse in a cart. Just over there, look. Gripper got out of the vehicle and nodded to his crew. That's four of us and one of them. Let's see what he wants. The villainous man who was in the reality, the, who was in the realty, the old, in reality, the old ship carpenter wearing a disguise, stared down from his perch at the gig at the Four Troughs. His voice held a sneer. So you got here finally. What time do you call this rolling up for a job, eh? We got lost. Oof. Flash had the wind knocked out of him by Gripper's elbow. Gripper did his best to stare and spat at the dust. None of your business, Granddad. We had a few problems, that's all. Now where's this old biddy's place? We will do the job. Don't get your whiskers in an uproar about that. Show us the way. John shook his head pityingly, looking at them up and down company troughs, eh? It's too late to do anything tonight. Mr. Smithers and Maud's wants you up at the house. Do they have any food up there, eats? The old seaman winked at Chunk. All you likes, tons of it. Have they got bandages and things, too? John chuckled wickedly. Probably, but they might have got enough to go around for your big hooter. Fell on it, did he? Gripper fished a leather-bound Kosh out of his pocket and began smacking it ominously to his palm. Listen, old man, you're too nosy for your own good, but I can fix that. Now, are you taking us up to the house, eh? John indicated the car. Come on, I'll take you. Gripper grabbed the back of Flash's coat as he began mounting the gig. We got a motor car. You get going, we'll follow you. Secreted with Ben and Alex in the rose bushes to one side of the police station door, Mackie, armed with a Sergeant Patterson's long pacing stick, whispered hoarsely through the opening charge window office. They're coming! Gripper stared suspiciously at the gray house building. This looks like no Toff's big house. The seaman climbed, the shipman climbed down from the gig. 'Cause it ain't. It's my house. Mr. Smithers don't want you lot to be seen around the mansion. We'll have you big, brave oligans going to sit about in your car all night? Gripper silenced the engine and got out, pointing a finger. Watch who you're calling hooligans, Grandpa. Come on, you'll see, lot. They swaggered up to the path nonchalantly, letting John see that they were not the least bit afraid. When he followed them, while he followed them. Gripper was about to raise the lion's head knocker when was flung open and Sergeant Patterson pulled him inside as he roared, "Now!" Will sprang forward and grabbed Chunk, charging from the rear as John and Mr. Mackey pulled Chaz and Flash into the station with their two companions. The boys watched through the window as the sergeant locked the door. Gripper was pale with shock and indignation. He immediately recognized the interior, having been in many police stations. "What's all this, then? We ain't done nothing wrong. I'll see our lawyers about this." The sergeant towered over Gripper, folded arms. "Colonel Busby Heath Smithers, I presume?" Gripper sensed the policeman had a mistaken identity. "You've got the wrong man, Sergeant. I ain't Colonel Busby, what's his name? Neither are my friends. Never heard of him." Patterson nodded understandingly. "Hmm. Well, we're glad we've cleared that up. Perhaps you'd like to tell me the tale of what you're doing in possession of the Colonel's motor car, number BLH 98, which was stolen from the outside of his house at South Hampstead Crescent in London last evening." Flash groaned. "Told you we should have taken the train, Grip." Gripper shot him a murderous glance, silencing him. He turned back to the sergeant. "You can't hold us here. We ain't committed no crimes. We found the motor car, see?" The sergeant's voice still retained a pleasant tone. "Found it, sir? Where in Churchhaven, outside the post office?" Chunk smiled in remembrance of the visit. "That's right, Sarge. Where the old lady nearly gave me a drink of water. I liked her." The boys listened in through the open window, chuckling as the sergeant replied, "Oh, aye, yeah. You'd be the one of the four royal couriers, or one of the ones off to buy a racehorse buyers, or who asked directions in Drakehampton post office? Which were you, think?" Chunk shook off his bowler hat, scratched his shaven head. I think the game's up, Grip. He's nabbed us fair and square." Gripper stamped his boot down on Chunk's foot. Shut up, thickhead. Don't say another word, none of yous." The sergeant at the charge office desk, his pleasant mood evaporating suddenly as he rapped out, "Enough of all this nonsense. George Peterson, Friedrich Lloyd, Hayes Halen, and Eric Wardle, you're under arrest for the theft of a motor vehicle, pending further investigations. Revealing any felonies, you'll be held in custody here until such times as ye appear before a magistrate. Have ye anything to say before the charges are brought against you?" Flash whispered to Grip. "He knows our proper names. How'd he find that out?" Gripper ground his teeth together audibly. "Shut up." Sergeant Patterson stared levelly at the four accused. "I said, have you anything to say about the charges?" Gripper glared up sullenly at him. "We want a lawyer." Mr. Mackey looked at them up and down with disdain. "I'm a lawyer, the only one in Chapelvale, but I don't deal in criminal law. Besides, I've quite enough clients at the moment. So what are your plans, gentlemen, eh?" Chaz's nose had stopped bleeding, and he sniffed carefully before blurting out, "The company we work for, London, Jackman, Doan, and Bowie, will get a lawyer for us. Real one from London, not some AC like that fella." Gripper groaned and clenched both fists as he turned on Chaz. "You stupid, loud-mouthed squealer." Chaz skipped nimbly out of range, placing himself behind the formidable figure of William Drummond. "Keep away from me. It was Gripper who pinched the motor car. The only one of us that can drive. I haven't done nothing. I'm not going to be left carrying for the mess of Miss Snotty-Nosed Maudie Bower and his father's firm. No, not for a local bigwig who's in with him there, either." It was at that moment that Constable Dutchman pounded on the station door, and the old seaman let him in. I thought we were coming to relieve me, Sarge. Hello, what do we got here? Sergeant Patterson took hold of Chaz finally. Tell you all about it later, Constable. Lock those three up in the holding cell. Will ya? I'll keep this fellow here with me. I've got a feeling he wants to tell me more. The sergeant relieved Mackie of his stick. Thanks for the help, gents. Time you own lads we're into bed. Though, does your dad know you're out this late, Alex? The younger boy stood framed in the open window with the blue-eyed boy reply, "It's all right, Sarge. Me and Amy told him he would be stopping over with Ben at Mrs. Wynn's tonight." The sergeant winked at Ben. "Well, make sure they get straight off to bed, and don't stay up late yourself." Ben grinned cheekily. "Bed? Not in the like, sir. It's gone midnight. Do you realize today's Thursday, the deadline for Chapelvale? I'm going back to see if Ms. Wynne and our friends have cracked the riddle." The boys ran off with Will, the shipman, and the lawyer in their wake, calling, "Hey, wait for us!" That's where we'll stop for today. Let me sing to you. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to claim the title of United States Marines. Our flags unfurled to every breeze, from dawn to setting sun. We have fought in every clime and place where you could take a gun. In the snow of far-off northern lands, and in sunny tropic scenes, you will find us always on the job, the United States Marines. Here's health to you and to our corps, which we are proud to serve. In many a strife we fought for life and never lost our nerve. If the Army and the Navy ever looked on heaven's scenes, they will find the streets are guarded by United States Marines. Semper Fi, hoorah. Let me pray for you, and we get out of your hair. Dear Lord, thank you for today. Bless everyone. They need housing, they need food, transportation. Please work in their lives. In your holy name. Amen. Emmanuel, God with us.